Hello and welcome to another episode of the Wildcast podcast. This is Michael Lev, columnist and senior writer for the Arizona Daily Star, and I have a very special guest today on the podcast. It's Mike Rooney, the foremost expert in the country on Big 12 baseball. Mike, you know his work from ESPN. If you are a subscriber to d1baseball.com, which I highly recommend, if you are a college baseball fanatic, you will see all of Mike's work there covering the Big 12 conference. Mike, how are you?
Yeah, Michael, great to see you. And by the way, very impressive, like the music and the background. Like this is this is a professional operation here. Well done. Bravo.
So high tech. Man, we don't even have like when Justin Spears and I do it, it's just the two of us. Today it's just me and you. But hey, if anyone wants to, learn how to do podcasting for no money whatsoever, they are more than welcome to help us out as a producer. But thank you for joining us, Mike. I'm really excited about this conversation. We are going to preview the Arizona and Big 12 baseball seasons. We are recording this podcast on Tuesday, which means, Mike, that we're only, 4 days away from the start of the college baseball season. How are you feeling about that?
Yeah, 3 sleeps, if you will. Yeah, super excited. This has been, I'm not sure if you felt this, Michael, but this has been a very condensed preseason. This is literally the first day that the season could start. It's not even the third Friday in February 13th. And then the convention was a little bit later, the coaches convention. I always go to that. And so it's the the conference previews that we all write. It is felt very rushed. But all that said, I think I speak for everyone in our ecosystem where it's like, let's get to opening day, enjoy the excitement of opening weekend. And we're really fortunate in Arizona. We have so many great games this weekend in our backyard. And then, and then just get into the rhythms of the season and off we go. I mean, opening day, opening weekend, it never gets old.
I don't know where you're going to be this weekend, but I will be up in Surprise for the college baseball series. Arizona will be facing Stanford, Oregon State, and Michigan at Surprise Stadium, which should be really cool, an interesting way. Are you going out to any of the series here in the area?
Yeah, I'll be out. I have the Grand Canyon game Friday night against Northeastern, and then that's part of the Desert Invitational. And then ASU in Phoenix will be hosting Omaha from Nebraska. I don't think I'll get to any of that. And then the Desert Invitational put on by MLB has several other teams, so I'll see some of that. But my plan is to definitely spend some time in Surprise. If you've never been, Michael, it's really cool. Oregon State travels big time. Like the whole stadium will be
I've
orange.
Seen it. Yep, yeah. I've seen it.
Yeah, it's really, they play great there. They have a great following there. It's a beautiful ballpark. And, of course, and as you mentioned, like it's 4 very interesting teams.
Yeah, a little Pac-12 flavor to that series and Surprise, to be sure. So let's dive a little bit into Arizona here. Unfortunately, we have to start with some bad news that dropped earlier today. All-American closer Tony Pluta is out for the season. Looks like a UCL situation, Tommy John surgery. So he is lost for the year. This is a huge blow for Arizona because Tony Pluta was lights out last year. There were a couple bobbles at the very end of the season. Not totally his fault. Some fluky stuff happened in Omaha at the College World Series. But when you saw that news, heard about that, what was your reaction?
Yeah, I'm of like 7 minds on this, right? I'm not even of 2 minds where it's, I think when I wrote the Big 12 preview for D1 baseball, one of my overwhelming thoughts on Arizona, on the Wildcats, is that the days of doubting Chip Hale and his transition to college baseball, like we're well past that. I mean, it's 4 straight regionals. We're hosting a regional 2 years ago. You go to Omaha last year through Eugene and Chapel Hill. I mean, you talk about going in the front door. And, they've just, Chip has just done a brilliant job leading this program. And, the truth is he's the exception. Like most of the guys that have more major league pedigree than college pedigree have struggled big time in college baseball. And that's not been the case for Chip. But I want to, I think that's important context I'm giving myself. I think we all have huge question marks on the position player side for Arizona. And so, it's so many new faces. And but I like the pieces. Like, I like the talent level of the roster. The roster's got great depth. I just don't know these players. Like, none of us do, right? And so, and Chip has done this several times over the last couple of years. But you have the pitching staff that can just kind of hold down the fort while these position players grow up. Well, then Kevin Vance becomes the head coach of San Diego State. And then, John DeRoyan leaves for pro ball. And then I might mess up his last name, but Owen Cuff leaves for pro ball. So now, hey, Sean Kenny's a, big time college baseball veteran, but that's a lot of change for the pitching staff. But then you start to say to yourself, I'm sorry, I'm so long-winded here, but I'm basically emptying my brain at how I've thought about this.
It's a podcast, Mike.
Yeah, that's right.
Free.
No shot clock. Yes.
Yeah.
So then you kind of take yourself back to, okay, this team's going to be fine because you've got Owen Kronkowski and you've got Bailey Smith and you've got Smith Bailey. Geez, I knew it. It's so funny. Like, I pause every time I say it, and you're like, get a 50-50 chance. So and then you've got Tony Pluta, and so you're like, okay, it's going to be fine. So, but now you don't have Tony Pluta, and I can't unsee how incredible he was in Chapel Hill in that super regional. He wasn't going to let them not get to Omaha, and he's an incredible kid, as you know. I would say this, like, if you have removed the names, if there's one place on the roster where Arizona could lose a body, it's the bullpen. They have so much pitching depth and so much arm talent in that bullpen. But all that to say, nobody can afford to lose Tony Pluta.
Right. It's going to be really interesting to see how they handle this situation. I don't know if they have someone in mind right off the bat. They were talking up Benton Hickman, who's a freshman from your neck of the woods up there in the Phoenix area. Talked about him as a future closer. Smith Bailey was telling me he's got a really funky arm angle and almost looks like the ball is rising, which is physically impossible when you're pitching off a mound, but you can definitely give that appearance. They also brought in a bunch of guys in the portal: Corey Kling, JT Drake. They brought in a left-hander, Patrick Morris. Nolan Straniero is a really interesting arm from Elon. So as you mentioned, there are a lot of options, but man, Tony Pluta brought a certain, like, there was an intangible factor that he had, right? Like a mental toughness. His stuff was really good, of course, like really good cutter. A really good curveball, also good changeup. But to me, it was more like his presence, his determination, that were, like you said, he was not going to let him lose down there in Chapel Hill. He was going to close out those games, and he did. So, we talked to Chip yesterday, and he, I was asking him some questions about Tony, and he had mentioned how, Tony's been around here so long, like he's almost like a coach in the bullpen. I'm like, thinking back on that comment, I'm like, why did he say that he was going to be like a coach in the bullpen? I guess now we know. Chip obviously knew that something was going on. Maybe there was an MRI or something in the works, and turned out to be bad news, unfortunately, for them. You guys, were you part of the ranking system over? I'm sure you were at D1 Baseball, where D1 Baseball does this thing every year. If people don't know, they rank every position. Like, they'll have top 50 second baseman, top 50 third baseman. You guys did the top 100 relief pitchers in the country. Tony Pluta was number one on that list. So we could talk all we want about, they have some possibilities to replace him, but you're talking about an elite guy, a true closer.
Yeah, and also, like, the track record is very long with Tony. Like, he's had to prove it the whole way, and wasn't. I like, for me, it feels like last year it would be unfair to say that came out of nowhere, because he was brilliant in 2024 too. Like, now it wasn't a 1.46 ERA like last year, but still, it's 55 appearances over the last 2 years, and we all know that. High Corbett is an incredible place to hit. Like, to have a 1.46 ERA at that place is really challenging. But I just think Tony was matchup proof, like he was, there's so many bullpen pieces that are matchup dependent. Like, hey, do they have a bunch of right-handers? Do they have a bunch of left-handers? How's the park play? That type of thing. With Tony Pluta, it didn't matter. He was just he's such a bright person, and he's so experienced. He was just going to figure out what he needed to do that day. So I'm with you, Michael. Like, no matter which way you slice it, this is a huge loss for Arizona. And it does, like, I feel like this is going to be one of the most challenging coaching jobs for Chip Hale since he's been at Arizona, because the pieces are still there to have a great season, but it's whatever layup was possible is no longer available to them. Like they're going to have to really dig and claw and be creative to put this thing together.
Yeah, it's kind of like Arizona basketball last night against Kansas. The layups weren't necessarily available the way
Yes.
that the Jayhawks clogged the paint. You alluded to the fact that Kevin Vance left for the San Diego State head coaching job in June. And then they named John DeRuin as his replacement almost immediately. John was Kevin's assistant, and they're like, continuity, players know John. John knows the system. Let's just run with this. And then John leaves in December to take an MLB job with the New York Mets. Owen Cuff, who was his assistant, then leaves to take a job with the Colorado Rockies. Sean Kenny from Iowa is brought in to be his replacement. So essentially, you're talking about 3 pitching coaches in about a matter of 6 months. I have a 2-part question for you about this. Number one, what can you tell us about sort of this migration that's taken place among coaches going from college baseball to MLB? And then secondarily, what do you know about Sean Kenny?
Yeah, I would say like the migration is it's kind of like it's been a two-way street. Like we've had these waves of pro coaches wanting to come to college, and then we've had this wave of college coaches now this offseason in particular going to pro ball. And I think one of the things that's a factor here is that roster construction in college baseball has gotten really messy. And between the transfer portal and NIL, and there are just so few coaches who their favorite part of the job is the daily grind of recruiting. And now that you got to recruit your own roster, and so I think pro ball has probably never been more attractive, as we're still trying to, and I think pro ball's gotten smart. Like they've provided a better lifestyle now for these college coaches. And I think the risk for these guys though is it does feel like minor league baseball and pro ball is getting ready to shrink again. Now, I think if I was one of those coaches, though, they probably are thinking, man, I'm going to have like professional baseball on my resume. I know I'm taking a risk here, but I'm probably going to be able to find my way back into college baseball if it continues to expand. So, it would never begrudge the guys for making that choice. It is very, very interesting. I think for Arizona, the bad news is that Kevin Vance and John DeRoy were just so good together. Like that was one of Arizona's superpowers, quite honestly. Like this was, they always are going to have good offense, but man, those two were just brilliant together. And they talking about a Batman and a Robin. I think Sean Kenny is the perfect. This is not a perfect scenario, but if you have to endure something like this, having an uber veteran like Sean Kenny is huge. And Sean Kenny's coached everywhere. He's coached in the Big Ten. He's coached in the SEC. He's coached on the West Coast. This guy is just a veteran. So I think what he'll give Arizona's pitching staff is a very calm, even keel presence. And again, when you've got Smith Bailey and Owen Krankowski, there's a lot of hay in the barn already there. I don't know how much more tinkering those guys need. They just need to go out and take the ball 18 times. And so I think that was a very savvy hire by Chip. And long term, I'm really curious to see what does this look like, because it has been such a difference maker for Arizona. But I think for this year, Sean Kenny will do an exceptional job.
Yeah, Sean's basic message when I talked to him was like, I don't want to mess this up. They've got a good thing going here. The pitchers already have routines, which is one of his big points of emphasis. Like, I don't have to impress that upon them. They know what they're doing. I'm just going to learn. I'm going to learn them. They're going to learn me. And we'll kind of figure this thing out together. Chip was looking for someone with experience calling games, and Sean Kenny certainly has plenty of that. I mean, he's been doing this for 30 years now. He also wanted someone who could maybe, work on some of the intricacies of being a pitcher, like holding runners and those types of things. John DeRuin was very promising as a potential pitching coach, but he had never been a pitching coach. So there was a little bit of a wild card element to that. So for those who are, again, unfamiliar with D1 baseball, and I highly encourage you to subscribe if you're into college baseball, but they do these fall reports that are incredibly extensive. And if you're a baseball nerd, they're awesome, because it is like, you can really nerd out on how deep Mike and his colleagues get into uh, batting stances, approaches at the plate, the stuff that the pitchers have. If you could go back into the memory banks a little bit, Mike, did anything stand out to you, or did anything that you remember that pops to mind when you think back to assembling the fall report for Arizona as far as their personnel goes?
Yeah, I remember going into the fall report, and again, I live in the state of Arizona, so the Arizona fall report's unique for me where I can actually go see them play a couple times in the fall. So you get to put your own eyes on the roster, which is super fun. And then, you get to we always Chip is always very generous with his time. You get to have a long conversation with him, and his assistant coaches are awesome. Trip Couch and Toby DeMello. I mean, just these are great people. So it's very easy to be able to create some clear thoughts, but you also got to remember it's the fall, right? And we're not keeping score yet. And, it's there's no results to panic about. But I remember thinking I've got huge concerns about this position player group, but I also really like the talent I'm seeing, like, for instance, like no Mason White, no Brendan Summerhill. That's spooky. I mean, those are two of the best players in the country last year. I mean, Summerhill is a big, big, big draft pick, and Mason White's the best player on the field I mean, I was there at the Big 12 tournament. It was a joke. Like for like 3 weeks, you couldn't keep him in the stadium, and it didn't matter which stadium. And so, like those are big losses. And, whether it's Moran at shortstop, I love Cash Brennan this fall at shortstop, like 6'4" freshman, doesn't look sped up, left-handed hitter. So I love the depth of the roster for Arizona. The Easton Bryfogel's got to be healthy. Like that's a non-negotiable. Can Maddox Mikalakis take another step? I was actually Mikalakis had a good year last year. I actually thought he was going to have, when I saw him in the fall, I thought, okay, this dude's breaking out. Like this is going to be 20 home runs. And he didn't have a breakout season. He had a very solid season, but I think a breakout's still in there. So, and, like here, Nate Nowitzki is my kind of player. Like he's kind of like right out of the 1970s. I wouldn't, I'm not telling him he should do this, but like if I caught him smoking a cigarette up behind the dugout, that would totally fit the profile. But, just old school bat to ball, that type of thing. Catcher's really interesting. The JC transfer Meyer was everybody was recruiting him. He was a guy, he looks the part, but never done at this level. So yeah, I like the pieces. It's just a matter of who's going to step forward and establish themselves.
Yeah, so Arizona offensively brings back Easton Bryfogle, whom you mentioned, who's got a ton of talent, but has been slowed by injuries his first 2 seasons, just kind of in and out of the lineup, stops and starts. I wrote a column about him. That's part of our baseball and softball season preview section, which is coming out in print on Wednesday, and a lot of those stories have already rolled out. They also bring back Andrew Kane, who it looks like is going to play right field, because they've got a couple guys they like at first base. You mentioned Nate Nowitzki, who's a redshirt freshman who he makes contact. Then that is a big point of emphasis for Chip Hale this year, after he saw what Coastal Carolina and Louisville were able to do to Arizona by simply putting the ball in play. Tony Lira is another one emerging at first base, whom they really like, who was in the portal for about 5 minutes, decided he wanted to come back, lost a bunch of weight, and has always been someone who just smashes the crap out of the ball in batting practice. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And then, Roman Myers behind the plate, and also Bo Sylvester, a transfer from, I think it's Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
they said he's been one of the surprises of the offseason. So, and Tyler Bicker's a new second baseman from Milwaukee, does have a track record, albeit in a lower level league, but someone who gets on base a lot. Seems like Chip said he gets hit by pitches a lot, which was something that Aaron Walton did really well, if you want to call that a skill. So there are pieces in place. It's just going to take some time to figure out the exact right combination. And that's why you hope that Owen Kramkowski and Smith Bailey will be as good or better than they were last year, giving you 6 innings, Friday nights, Saturday nights, setting you up for the weekend, keeping you in the game while they sort out the bullpen and they sort out the lineup.
Yeah. And I would say, like you mentioned, Andrew Kane, and I failed to, but I actually think he's their best hitter. No, and
Mm,
that's no offense to Mikalakis or Breifogel, but I just remember last year, and I think it was the Arizona State series where U of A is dealing with some injuries in the outfield, and Andrew Kane felt like he was a really important piece, giving him good at bats, serviceable play in the outfield. And I remember Chip saying that Andrew Kane was a really good high school basketball player. And
yep.
that's the type of athlete he is. He's not going to win any foot races, but like that first step quickness and agility and coordination are his jam. And I remember when he was a freshman, the coaches loved him as a hitter. He probably ends up being their 3-hole hitter in my opinion. And he's just got a great temperament to hit, and he was very impressive last year. And so, I think one of the other things that's going to be really interesting for me, Michael, is Jack LaFlamme.
Hmm.
I think he's from Brophy, and I saw him throw 99 this fall, and it's just so easy, like easy velocity. And you could see, it's interesting talking to scouts because, the local scouts for the Four Corners are all people that we all know in this community. They're great guys. And, we're all watching LaFlamme throw 99 in the fall. And, for me, it's easy to look at the scouts and be like, gentlemen, what did we not like about 6'6" and throwing 99, not breaking a sweat? But I'm teasing them, right? Like the scouts were very thorough. They knew who he was, and it was a blessing probably for Jack LaFlamme to get to college baseball and get his legs underneath of him. And the breaking ball does need to sharpen up. It needs to have more depth. It's fine, but it's not like I wouldn't call it a devastating out pitch, but in the fall outing I saw, he faces 7 hitters and he punches out 5 of them, and the fastball is just overwhelming. So, it's again, like there are concerns about Arizona right now that are justified, but there is plenty of talent on this roster. This is a good roster.
Jack LaFlamme is a true freshman, as you mentioned, from Brophy College Prep. He's 6', legit 6'6". When he didn't pitch in the Mexican Baseball Fiesta, which is kind of their annual launch to fall ball. They play a professional team from down there, but I noticed he was definitely taller than everybody else, and that includes Smith Bailey, who's probably a legit 6'5". The one thing that Chip said about LaFlamme is that he's got longer levers, so it's a little bit harder for him to kind of stay tight and maintain the command that Smith Bailey had from the jump. Because I, of course, was like, hey, can Jack LaFlamme be the next Smith Bailey? That is a lot of pressure to put on a kid. I'm sure he's going to be in that mix for the 3rd or 4th starter spot or piggyback or whatever. So moving on to a little bit of Big 12 baseball talk. Last time, I'm going to plug D1 baseball, although you guys deserve all the plugs that you can get. But your colleague, Bradley Smart, did this really, really cool feature where he kind of came up with like a returning production index and the entirety of college baseball. Like it's an amazing chart. So the number 4 team in that ranking is TCU.
Yep.
And TCU is a consensus top 10 team. They are the consensus favorite to win the Big 12 this year. They have star power. They have returning experience. They've got incoming freshmen. Tell me why TCU is that team this year.
Yeah, I think in a sentence, TCU has got the best sophomore class in the country. I feel pretty confident saying that. You think about now, not all of them are going to be juniors. Like some of them, like their star is Sawyer Stroh-Snyder, who's a left-handed hitting, looks like a Division I running back. He's like 6'2", 200 pounds and flies. He had a quadruple double last year, Michael. Sawyer Stroh-Snyder had double-digit doubles, triples now, home runs, and stolen bases. So like he's just this freakish athlete. They've got Noah Franco, who's a left-handed hitting, left-handed pitching power guy. Their catcher Nolan Traeger is a sophomore. They've got Tommy Lepore back on the mounds, who's as good of a Friday night guy as anybody's got. And so, yeah, they just were, there's 2 ways to build a roster right now in college baseball. It's either go young and hope you can keep them together, or go old and stay old. Or, some teams are trying to thread the needle, but TCU kind of did UCLA a year delayed where they went young and they were able to keep them together. And it is a very imposing roster.
To have 10 triples, if you're playing at High Corbett Field, is one thing. To have 10 triples playing at quote unquote normal sized ballparks,
Yes,
is quite another. If you hit the ball in the alleys at high C, you can definitely get to third base. It's harder to do other places, but he's the headliner on the offensive side for TCU. Tommy Lepore, as you mentioned, the headliner on the defensive side, and they got all but one vote in the coaches poll, and that's just because Kirk Saarloos could not vote for TCU. So he had to vote for somebody else. Arizona, consensus number 2 in the league. This is, of course, before the Tony Pluta injury. That might have changed some opinions a little bit. Number 3, I find so fascinating, and that's West Virginia. Can you explain to me how West Virginia is good at baseball, knowing what the weather is like in Morgantown?
Oh man, Randy Mazey, their former coach, did such a great job planning, just like building a really solid foundation. And now Steve Saban's, his longtime assistant, has taken over, and they just, the community is all in. They're selling season tickets like it's going out of style. They keep adding on to that facility, which is really cool looking. I've never been, but it looks awesome on TV. And they just got a great formula, like they really do a great job recruiting New Jersey and Western PA. And even north of there, they've done an incredible job mining the Division II ranks. I mean, their last 2 best pitchers, Derek Clark and Griffin Kern, were Division II, highly accomplished Division II guys. They got another 3 Division II guys that are projected rotation arms. Chase Meyer, their right-hander, who's really talented. They're trying to move him from reliever to Friday night guy. He's going to have to throw more strikes to do that, but he certainly is not going to need to miss any more bats. I mean, it is wicked, wicked stuff. So, I just think there's a trust factor with West Virginia. They've been to back-to-back super regionals. I would also say too, Michael, like TCU was obvious at number 1. Arizona was an easy pick at number 2 because you trust the track record and because they pitch, right? When in doubt, go with who's got the best pitching. This next group of teams in the Big 12, for me, it was a little bit of pick them out of a hat.
The other probably contender for that 3rd spot, and who ended up, I think, number 4 in your predicted order of finish, was, of course, Arizona State. ASU had a little bit of a breakthrough last year. They finally made it back to the NCAA tournament. It had been a while. This is the first time that they made it under Willie Bloomquist. Willie got a contract extension in January, which is a big deal, to be sure. Now, you mentioned that there are a couple of different ways to go about building a baseball program these days. And while ASU does have some really good returning players like Landon Harrison, right, and Cole Carlone, who's Arizona fans would just as soon never see Cole Carlone again because they could not touch him. Big left-hander who I think is probably going to be their Friday night guy if everything works out. But they have leaned heavily into the transfer market to build their team out. What do you think about the way that they've gone about it and what this could look like if everything comes together for them this year?
Yeah, I would say and just to put context around it, like to me, this next group is like Kansas, Oklahoma State, Arizona State. Like those 3 are hard to separate for me. And then Kansas State's kind of like right there with Cincinnati and Texas Tech. But yeah, ASU is interesting because, hey, you've got an athletic director in Graham Rossini, who's a baseball guy, right? Like Graham spent 13 years with the Arizona Diamondbacks. He wants Arizona State to be excellent in baseball. And they were able to deploy that capital in the portal. Yeah, I love Arizona State's position player group. It's old. It's very accomplished. It's very dangerous. Like that they put together a very nice position player group. ASU's challenge on the mound, they've got the makings of an outrageously good bullpen. They have no proven starters, like 0.0. And the Cole Carlone experiment, they're not the only ones doing this, but like, hey, you take an All-American reliever and you put him in a starting role, like what if I'm going to be pessimistic, what you could end up with is an average starter, but you just lost an elite reliever. So you get hit twice. And Cole Carlone's going to have to do a much better job with pitch conservation if he's going to be their Friday night guy. So, but I do think ASU's lineup can play with anybody. Their bullpen has got incredible arm talent, velocity, out pitches. I don't know that group is quite as skilled as Arizona's, but ASU, if they can figure out who's going to get the first 15 outs Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they have a lot of upside, but that's also a big ask.
Sure, you put Kansas and Oklahoma State in that same kind of group, just behind the top two, right in there with ASU. There are 12 total teams that play baseball in the Big 12 out of, is that right? 12 or is it 14?
14.
14, Mike. 14 out of 16 play baseball in the Big 12. So give me someone in that back half of the league who you think maybe, if things break right for them, could be a sneaky surprise team this year.
So I would say, like, one of my big themes for the league this year, Michael, is the bottom of the league just keeps getting better. Like, there's going to be no, like BYU, who I think I picked last in my standings because I had to pick someone last. They're very, very old. Like, BYU's hitters are going to be, I think BYU has 5 seniors in their lineup and all of their pitching back. Now, they didn't pitch very good last year, but those kids are all a year older. And then Houston looks very improved. And Utah has got one of the best aces in the league in Calder McAnally. And then they've got 7 left-handed hitters. So Utah is going to be no picnic. I saw them, beat Vandy in a fall game this fall. So, I think if you made me pick a team down there, Texas Tech, I'm anticipating a big rebound. I think Texas Tech is going to be a regional team this year. And I just think their offense is going to be very, it's going to be kind of old school Texas Tech. Tim Tadlock did take them to Omaha 4 out of 6 years from 2016 on, or 2014 on, I should say, 2014 to 2019. It's just been a minute, and I think they're going to be improved. Cincinnati is a nightmare to play against. Their style is so unique. And, Oklahoma State, got to a regional final last year, amidst a ton of injuries. So I think that's a fun part of the baseball in the Big 12, Michael, is they're just the league has great depth. And I think we all despise conference realignment. But if there's one shining light, at least for me, in conference realignment, Big 12 baseball has been glorious. The league has really gotten good in baseball.
Yeah, Utah also has a new ballpark this year, so they'll have
gorgeous.
like a certain energy about them. I think that
Yeah.
That'll probably be a tough adjustment too for visiting teams that have never played there. And there's some renderings and some photos that they posted recently, it looks phenomenal.
They nailed it.
Could we have
really
one of those,
cool.
please? This is my last question for the great Mike Rooney, who we truly appreciate joining us here on the Wildcast. And this is a little bit of a bigger picture question.
Mm-hmm.
But can you win big in college baseball without a war chest these days? Because I know Arizona does not have a war chest. They're doing a lot of stuff to build up their NIL, but it's not like some of the SEC schools have, for example.
Yeah.
So do you think you can go all the way without that these days?
That's a great question. I think yes. But I think it's still hard to say. Like, one of the big storylines for me going into this season is we're coming off of 2 real outlier seasons in college baseball. When 2 years ago in 2024, we had 8 teams in Omaha from 2 different leagues, 4 ACC, 4 SEC. There's 30 leagues, and only 2 are represented in Omaha. And then last year we have 7 leagues. There's only 2 SEC teams and then 6 other leagues. So you're kind of like, okay, which is it? And I think I just think there's so many different ways to build your roster now. And the transfer portal and NIL are 2 very different things. But I think if you were Arizona, where I'd be encouraged is certainly, Smith Bailey and Owen Kramkowski could have gone anywhere they wanted. Like, they were a text message away from going somewhere and getting paid. And, maybe they're getting paid at Arizona. I have no idea. But, the fact that you can keep that caliber of player, there's no coach in any league in America that's not taking those 2 guys' phone call, right? But you kept them without, a gargantuan war chest. So I think what's really important right now, Michael, is war chest is helpful, right? Like, you can't be desperately under-resourced, but I think knowing your program identity that's the non-negotiable. Like, if you're just out there chucking money around or just trying to figure out things in recruiting, this current landscape will eat you alive. But I think if you have a good feel for, hey, here's what our best players look like, here are the places that we can recruit them from, and we're just going to we're going to be consistent in those ways, I think you've got a chance. Because I just think it's, Yeah, I think what we saw in Omaha last year, just you can't unsee it, like a Murray State and a UCLA going from 19 wins to almost 50 wins. You can turn it around fast in this day and age.
So that will conclude this episode of the Wildcast podcast. We are so thankful that Mike Rooney was able to join us. You can find Mike's work over at d1baseball.com, and you will find him on ESPN throughout the baseball season, especially in the postseason when we get to Selection Monday. Mike is always on that desk, and that is always such an exciting day. And then he's, often in the studio doing what is the name of that?
Squeeze play. Yeah. The whip arounds. Yeah.
It is the best, right? That first
glorious.
Weekend,
so
is there
fun.
anything better? So let me see if I can get this. Let me see if I can get the sound effect to work there. There we go. Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you so much, Mike Rooney, for joining us on the Wildcast. Thanks everybody for listening. You can find us on Apple. We're on Spotify. There's also a video version of this podcast that will be posted on Tucson.com, where you can see our bald headed visages coming right at you. Thanks again, Mike. This was so fun. I hope we can do it again.
Thanks, Michael.